All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to the 2022 Pierce County Caregiver Conference. My name is Lindsay Hotchkiss. I'm one of the community outreach and education specialists here with the Pierce County Aging and Disability Resource Center. Our event today is a collaboration between the Pierce County Aging and Disability Resources and the Healthcare Providers Council of Pierce County. A very special thank you to them and a very special thank you to all of our sponsors. You saw their slides at the beginning. We'll be running them during our break, and then their slides will be at the end as well. I have had some requests for the sponsor slide information. If you do want me to send that to you, you can either email me or put your information in the chat, and I'll put my email address in the chat so that you have it. All of our sessions this morning are being recorded, and we will be placing it on our event webpage. So if you have to step away, feel free to. You can catch up later online. And I will put the link to the webpage in our chat as well. It probably won't be posted until next week, though, so you won't be able to catch up for a few days. If you are interested in continuing education credit for today's conference, please email me. Again, I'll put my email in the chat. We can send out the certificates for today's conference so that you can get that DSHS credit. We know all you caregivers are very busy, whether you are a professional caregiver, whether you're caring for a loved one, and we really want to respect that. So our 4 sessions today are going to be 30 minutes each, 4 different presenters. And we'll do a 10-minute break halfway through so people have a chance to step away, take care of any needs, get something to drink or eat. If you have any questions at all during the conference, whether it's for myself or for any of our presenters, please feel free to enter it in the chat box. And we'll be taking time at the end of each presentation to answer questions, or I can respond to you with anything that I can answer throughout the conference. If we have any questions at the end, I can stay on and try to answer them as well. So if you have something, that you want to wait till the end, I'll be on for a little bit. We'll get started now with our first presenter. It's our very own Matt Santelli. Many of you probably know him. He works here with me at Pierce County, and he will be presenting on planning ahead for long-term care.
Great, thanks, Lindsay. I will get my screen up in 1 second. At the end of the presentation, we'll take additional questions from the chat, but feel free to put questions in the chat because I'll stop periodically during the presentation so people will be able to ask questions and hopefully I'll be able to answer them. I'm going to bring my screen up now. Okay, so this is the PowerPoint that we'll be going through. And like Lindsay said, it's planning ahead for long-term care. And I've got personal family experience with this that I'll share with folks as we go along. And that's information that I'll be sharing that I did get approval from my mom and dad, who were the ones that I had to plan for and who were in different kind of long-term care situations for quite a few years over the last few years. We call this our hot topics because we were trying to kind of gather together an idea of topics that are always kind of relevant to our population of senior and disabled folks here in Pierce County. And long-term care is one that always comes up over and over again, not only because of the aging population, but also because there's constant changes in how it's funded, both with Medicaid, and then there's the new Washington Long-Term Care Trust Act, sometimes known as Washington Cares, that we'll talk about as well. So as Lindsay noted, I'm Matthew Santelli. I'm one of the education and outreach specialists at Pierce County Aging and Disabilities Resource Center, along with Lindsay. That's our main intake phone number, 253-798-4600, and our website, pierceadrc.org. We will be having another conference coming up October 1, the Alzheimer's conference, and I'll talk a little bit about that when we're done with this presentation today. We always do provide a disclaimer because long-term care planning is very complex. And so we want people to know that the Pierce County Aging and Disability Resource Center does not endorse or recommend any long-term care insurance product, nor should this presentation today be considered an exhaustive review and or recommendation of any specific financial strategy to fund long-term care. The things that I know in working at the county in this position and others for the last 20 years is that every person's situation is different. Every family situation is different. So what might be good for one person definitely might not be good for another person. So we always keep that in mind when we're going forward in these types of presentations to make sure that people know there's a variety of ways to think about long-term care and to plan for it. Some families are more capable than others. And so we want to make sure that people realize that we're kind of talking about a variety of approaches to fund long-term care. Any questions, comments so far? Okay, so the presentation has kind of got 9 different aspects to it today. The first being understanding the need to plan ahead for long-term care and why. Long-term care in the presentation we're going to refer to as LTC. Does Medicare pay for LTC? We'll go over that question. What are some choices of LTC and what are the costs? And this discussion is really specific to the state of Washington because there's some programs like Medicare and Medicaid that are pretty similar nationwide, but not exactly similar, especially when it comes to Medicaid. And then there's different options that some states have that others do not. Fortunately, here in the state of Washington, we do have a lot of options for long-term care, both home-based and facility-based. So I'm talking today is talking about Washington State. You might have a relative in Nebraska or Tennessee. Their situation is going to be different. But if you call us about a family member or a friend needing help in those other states at the 4600 number, we can tell you who to contact locally to get that guidance. We'll also talk about long-term care insurance policies and whether that's something folks should consider buying. Other options, how else can I pay for long-term care, LTC? Does Medicaid pay for LTC? What about the Washington State Long-Term Care Partnership Program? And what about the Washington State Long-Term Care Trust Act? And finally, what legal documents do I need in place for LTC? And again, I'll touch on my own family's experience as we go through this in planning for long-term care. So understanding the need to plan ahead for long-term care is really needing to understand the costs and the likelihood of that long-term care need coming into your situation or your family's situation. According to Barron's, the average lifetime long-term care cost can be as high as $172,000. Of course, it varies for different families, but it can be definitely that high. The longer we live, the more likely it is that we may experience physical or mental decline requiring the assistance of care at home or in a care facility. Plus, there's disabling illnesses or injuries that can happen during any phase of life, limiting our ability to live independently. I think we've all known people who were otherwise healthy that might have had a disabling illness early in life, or a stroke, a head injury, an injury from a fall or a motor vehicle accident or the result of a crime. Those can happen to people at any phase of life. And for those of us who do spend time working with that population, it's not unusual that we'll deal with seniors that are trying to think about long-term care, but oftentimes we're dealing with people much younger in their lives who are thinking about long-term care as well. Like I said, long-term care decisions are complex and often challenge our physical, emotional, and financial stability. Especially when you're in the realm of family planning, it's often very difficult for families to think about what is the best outcome for a family member. And it can vary according to mom or dad, for example. We had to plan for both my mom and my dad. And the situations that we ultimately kind of thought about were different because my dad was more receptive to some things than my mom was, and my mom was more receptive to some things than my dad was, and vice versa. So it's not unusual that even within a family, there's decisions that can kind of diverge depending upon the person's needs and kind of their attitude about accepting care and what kind of care is most comfortable for them. And then finally, traumatic brain injury and or dementia-related illnesses require additional levels of expertise for us to make wise decisions. So the reason I put that in there is because we have one program that I'll touch on called the COPES program. And that's the program that's a Medicaid program that provides a lot of service hours of care in the home for a client, or can also fund clients going into care facilities like assisted living and adult family homes. And really, when we look at it, the COPES program works really well for folks that have some sort of disabling injury or illness physically, or even like a stroke affected person or someone with a brain injury sometimes. But oftentimes, when you go into that realm of when a person's reasoning is impacted through dementia or a brain injury or a stroke, the COPES program can work for a while, but if there's dangerous situations where the person's falling or the person's getting into arguments or fights with neighbors or gets aggressive with caregivers or wanders, then even those situations become challenging for us because we can put the care in the home, but because of the person's reasoning capabilities failing, it makes it very hard to make those home care situations work. On the other hand, we have people that are total care, that are paraplegic, that cannot get out of bed, that need lifting, moving, Hoyer lifts to get them out of bed into the shower. And we can sometimes very successfully handle those heavy care situations for people who are very physically compromised because they still have some capability of reasoning and understanding their need. It's when a person really falls into that situations where they no longer understand their need that it becomes a lot more difficult. So I'll pause there. It's the next slide. Any questions so far? Are we doing okay? Great. So the question that often comes up for folks is Medicare. Does Medicare pay for LTC? And I always say Medicare with a lot of emphasis because Medicare is not Medicaid. But in public forums, oftentimes the two words get mixed up. So one thing that frustrates me as one of the folks at the office who does a lot of presentations and internal staff trainings for both Medicare and Medicaid is how often the two terms get mixed up in public forums, journalists, articles, things like that. But they're two very, very different programs, and it's important for people to understand that. So most of us in our working lives, through earned income, through pulling a paycheck from an employer, pay into Medicare because Medicare is a federal health insurance for which most people qualify at age 65 or after 24 months receiving Social Security disability payments. So it's not unusual. We have folks aging into Medicare. There's even folks who work here at the county that often contact me and say, hey, Matt, I'm going to be retiring in another year. I'm going to turn 65. I'm going to work here at the county till I'm 67. What does that mean for my Medicare planning? And then we get clients who are already long into their Medicare lives and have questions about Medicare Advantage and other open enrollment questions. And then we have clients who are much younger. We'll have a client who's 40 years old who had a stroke or a brain injury of some kind or some other disabling condition. And they're already on Medicare because Social Security has approved them for a monthly cash payment of Social Security disability. So Medicare can span many different age groups. It's not strictly limited to seniors. What does Medicare consist of? How does it pay for what it covers? Medicare consists of Part A, which is hospital and skilled nursing facility care, and Part B, medical care in the community. Those are the two primary methods of payment for medical services that are covered under Medicare. And then there's also what's known as Part C, which is a Medicare Advantage plan, which manages the Medicare benefit by a private or nonprofit, sometimes company, sometimes privately held company. The most stark example of that is Kaiser, formerly Group Health. Kaiser has a Medicare Advantage plan for folks who are on Medicare. And for those who are familiar with the Kaiser model, that means when you're on Medicare Advantage with them, you have to go to their providers. So that's the difference of a Medicare Advantage plan. It basically takes control of the Medicare benefit and assigns providers for you to see. Unlike original Medicare, if you just have Medicare A and B, you can pretty much go to a Franciscan provider, you can go to a multi-care provider, community healthcare, whoever's out there that's available to serve you. Then the final part of Medicare is Part D, Medicare prescription drug coverage. So Those are the parts of Medicare. Now, people often confuse Part A's ability to pay for skilled nursing facility care as being a long-term care coverage. It is not that. It strictly allows for skilled nursing facility care to be available to you once you've had some sort of qualifying illness or injury that typically requires you to have been hospitalized, usually for 3 overnights. So the typical model that we see with most of our clientele is they have some injury or illness, say they break a hip, or they have to go in for some sort of cardiac surgery or cancer surgery, whatever the case might be, or treatment in the hospital. They're in there for 3 overnights, and then they're still very ill, not well enough to go home, but they don't need to stay in the hospital. They go to a skilled nursing facility. Medicare Part A will pay for that transfer to the skilled nursing facility for up to 20 days at no cost. To 21st day, then there's usually a daily copay that has to be paid to the facility in order for the person to stay there. Now, most skilled nursing facilities do their best to have that 3-week period be the primary rehabilitation period, and then the person goes home. In my mom's case, for example, she had a terrible injurious fall at home, head injury, bleeding, wounds, all these things that had to be treated in the hospital. I think she was in the hospital for 5 or 6 days. She went to University Place Rehabilitation Center. They did a very good job of getting her back well enough to walk again and move around pretty well. But she was still very unhealthy to return home. She was still falling a lot. She was still incapable of managing most of her daily healthcare tasks in terms of personal hygiene and things like that. Plus, there was a pretty significant overlay of dementia for her. So once her Medicare said, okay, you've rehabilitated, this is as well as you're going to get, because what's interfering for you now is the remnants of the head injury and the dementia, then we started to pay for her care at that point. So we'll talk about what that looked like for us to keep her in the skilled nursing facility, because she was rapidly declining at that point, and we did not move her to a less restrictive facility like an adult family. So what is the final conclusion about all this discussion related to Medicare? Medicare does not pay for long-term care. That's the conclusion. It does not pay for long-term care. It only pays for skilled nursing facility rehabilitation following a hospitalization with a qualifying injury or illness. This rehabilitation period is time limited depending upon how quickly the person returns to baseline stability in the skilled nursing facility. Sometimes people only have to be a week in a skilled nursing facility to be well enough to return home. Sometimes it's the full 3 weeks. Sometimes they don't ever get to that point, but Medicare doesn't say, oh, you can stay there and we'll pay for it. Medicare says you're done as far as Part A's allowance to rehabilitate. And now you stay in that facility, you move to a different facility, you return home if you're well enough, you go on Medicaid. There's plenty of different options that can happen at that point, but Medicare will not keep paying just because you're not well enough and haven't recovered to the point that you're totally well to live independently at home again. So I'm going to go to the next slide unless there's any questions. We can certainly take them. Okay, so what are the choices and costs for long-term care? Again, this is basically, we're talking about the state of Washington here. So number one is home care with a licensed, bonded, and insured agency caregiver. Typically, you're looking at anywhere from $25 to $30 an hour, although now I'm hearing it can go as high as $35 an hour, depending upon the care need. Sometimes there'll be an hourly discount if you have 24-hour care in the home. For example, when we had care in my parents' home overnight, depending upon how many overnights we hired the agency for, we got something of a percentage discount on the hourly rate. Next up, beyond home care would be assisted living. That's where a person lives, typically in a studio apartment in a building, but they have care needs, and those care needs are met by the staff there. They might need someone to help them shower, someone to get them out of bed each day, someone to safely have them a toilet or other personal hygiene tasks. So those costs can range anywhere from $4,000 to $7,000 per month, depending upon what the care needs are. There's usually a base amount to just live there, and living there means you have all your utilities paid. There's some housekeeping. You typically have your 3 meals a day, some medication management, things like that, laundry service potentially. But then when there's care needs layered on top of that, it can get very expensive very quickly. And then assisted living requiring not only help with activities of daily living, but secure memory care can be anywhere from $6,000 to $8,000 per month. And these memory care units in care facilities are becoming more and more common. There's a new facility going up down by Wright Park in Tacoma that's going to have memory care. There's some facilities in Puyallup along the South Hill Meridian corridor there that the whole facility is memory care. They do nothing but memory care. And basically that means it's a person whose reasoning has gone to the point where they don't even have the recognition of needing care. So there's often a lot of issues with reminders and supervisions and prompting. Typically, these folks need to be in a secure facility where they cannot just walk out the door. They have to be escorted if they need to leave to go to doctor's appointments and things. So those memory care aspects of the care make it a lot more expensive. The next step up from there then in terms of care needs would be an adult family home, typically one that would require the person to have total care. It could be anywhere from $7,000 to $9,000 per month. And I'm really kind of ballparking these numbers because you know what an inflationary environment we're living in right now. We know how difficult it is to staff anything work-wise, let alone care facilities. So I'm not high on these numbers. I'm probably low on these numbers. So keep that in mind. So an adult family home is basically a neighborhood home. You could have one in your neighborhood. You might not even know it. There's I think upwards of 250, 300 of these adult family homes sprinkled through Pierce County, for example. And again, it's a neighborhood home that's been modified to have maybe 5 rooms in it that accommodate seniors or disabled folks who have injuries or illnesses that need more care than assisted living, but don't typically need total skilled nursing facility care. And then you jump up to full skilled nursing facility care. That's where like my mom was. She wasn't able to leave, but she really wasn't well enough to go to an adult family home even because she really needed the full institutional capabilities of this care facility there at the skilled nursing level. Now, if she hadn't been declining so rapidly, we probably could have found an adult family home for her, but it was clear that she was steadily moving towards passing. And that's what happened within about 3 months of her Medicare not paying anymore. So at the time she passed, she was in a shared room, and I think we were paying $9,000 a month for her care. And she got excellent care there. We were very happy about it. We were able to overlay end of life care for her when she was in a situation where she was very close to her end of her life, and they kept her very comfortable. So we were happy with that outcome, but not every family can afford $9,000 a month for 3 months, let alone 1 month. So then with those costs in mind, with that look at what the different care options are, people often say, should I buy a long-term care insurance policy? So this is kind of the first step that people think about when they're thinking about planning for long-term care. Is there a way to cover the cost by buying a long-term care insurance policy, no different than having health insurance in place or vehicle insurance or homeowners insurance? There are several companies statewide that sell these policies. Many who would like to purchase a policy, however, will not qualify or cannot afford to do so because of age, pre-existing conditions, and chronic illnesses. So myself, for example, I have 2 conditions, high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And so I would not qualify to buy a long-term care policy at age 57. My wife has been type 1 diabetic since she was a little girl. She probably would never have been able to purchase a long-term care insurance policy because of that pre-existing condition. So one thing that often puts people off on this decision right away is because they do a health screening, and oftentimes people will not be able to buy the policy because of their health situation. Policies also typically require waiting periods, which is the time period when you qualify for the benefit, but before the benefit is paid, there are daily payment limits and lifetime payment limits. So what would that look like if you had the policy? Well, say you had a stroke, otherwise you had been healthy, you've got a long-term care insurance policy. They may say, okay, you have the stroke, now we're waiting 90 days before we pay you any benefit because we're going to determine during that 90-day period whether that stroke is truly a disabling condition or it's something you're going to be able to recover from. And then they may say, even if you qualify after 90 days, we're only going to pay $100 a month for your care. And then they may say, and by the way, that $100 a month ends after 36 months. These are just examples, and it's not a criticism of the policies. It's just that you have to know what the details are in the policies when you buy one of these long-term care insurances. The policies also typically require that at least 2 activities of daily living, also known as ADLs, need care assistance for a person to qualify. So it's not just a situation of, I can't maintain the quality of my housekeeping like I used to, and I want someone to help me with that. It has to be identifiable care assistance needs for at least 2 activities of daily living. Usually that's something related to dressing, hygiene, grooming, toileting, safe mobility, things like that. Policies can require specific types of personnel to complete health assessments on a person seeking to qualify for the benefit. So this question comes up a lot. Who's going to determine my eligibility? Now, some policies have it written into their policy that their contracted people are the ones that are going to determine your eligibility. No different than some auto insurances used to have their own people that would determine the actual cost to repair your vehicle. So it's something similar to that. Other policies will say that they will take some sort of an assessment from a nurse practitioner or doctor. But again, it's usually ones that they're going to say are qualified to do those assessments. So keep that in mind. And some policies provide an inflation adjustment, some don't. And by that, it means, okay, it's $100 a day now. A year from now, $100 a day ain't going to get me as much. Is there going to be an increase in a year from now? Many policies no longer have that inflation adjustment. So what I've seen over my work in the county over the last 20 years is these policies have gotten more restrictive in terms of the benefit period you have, the daily payment you have, and how much that payment will go into your lifetime before it ends. Years ago, you would get a benefit and would last forever. So the lucky people who got those early on got a lifetime benefit. Those policies are long gone and don't happen anymore. So keep that in mind. Okay. So other ways you could think about paying for long-term care, and these are just brainstormed ideas. You can self-insure for long-term care over a lifetime on your own, or with guidance from an elder law attorney who was a financial counselor. Now, fortunately, my parents had built up quite a bit of assets over their lifetime, and they both also had real estate. So we were able to do long-term care planning with an elder law attorney and put a family trust together where we held those assets. And then I and my siblings kind of worked together to determine the best way to spend that money for the care that my parents needed. And thank God, all of their care needs were met. People often go to refinance their house and use the proceeds to pay for long-term care. Again, this is really tricky when you're talking about pulling the equity out of your home. We're not recommending it, but this is tactics we have seen people use. Reverse mortgages are another one that people use late in their life because it's limited to people above, I think, age 62 to even get a reverse mortgage. Oftentimes people will get those and oftentimes use it to pay for care in their home, or sometimes to pay for one spouse to go into a care facility, for example. Other people, and I just talked to a family member the other day who did this. She sold her house and moved in with supportive family members who were willing to provide care for them, or with the help of agency caregivers. That's why they were calling us to determine, once she'd spent down some of the proceeds from the house sale, whether there were any programs that we offered that would help them. If you're a veteran, you could qualify for veteran aid and attendant pension for your care. Potentially, you could qualify for that. Or if you're low income with few financial assets, you could qualify for Medicaid. So we'll talk a little bit about that step next in terms of how does Medicaid pay for long-term care. So the program that we first think of if people call us and say, what's Medicaid going to do for me if I need long-term care? We always think of the COPES program, which is known as the Community Options Program Entry System. It doesn't tell you a whole lot. It basically is the most expansive Medicaid program that pays for care, either in the home or in a care facility, such as an assisted living and adult family home. Skilled nursing is actually a different Medicaid type of coverage, but it does similar things in terms of it pays for care. So the COPES program is the one we think of first. They just recently increased the income eligibility. So if you were a single person and you called our office And you said, I have limited income and assets and I want to go on the COPES program. Well, your income would have to be below $2,523 a month, and your assets would have to be below $2,000 if you were a single person. A married couple, it would have to be below $61,890. Now, it can get very complicated in terms of what assets qualify. Typically, your home is exempt, your belongings in the home are exempt, typically a car is exempt. And then it gets complicated too, because there's issues with regard to look back periods in terms of what was your financial life looking like the last 5 years. Gifting can be a problem. There's also estate recovery. So we could do a whole presentation on that topic. We're not going to. Sufficient to say, if you have questions, you want to call our county phone number, 798-4600. If it's a simple case of us walking you through the eligibility and helping you apply, we'll do that. If it's more complicated in terms of your asset and income profile, we would put you in touch with an elder law attorney to work on that. There's also newer programs that came about the last few years with higher income and eligibility limits. The tailored support for older adults is one. It has the same income eligibility for an applicant, but the asset limit's much higher, as you can see, $53,100 for a single person, $112,990 for a married couple. Now, keep in mind, there's different types of Medicaid. So again, it gets very confusing because there's Medicaid if you're just a regular walking around person, a younger person, not disabled, that needs medical care and has no income. You're going to get what's known as Apple Health Medicaid, also known as MAGI Medicaid, Modified Adjusted Gross Income Medicaid. Once you go into the Medicare world, whether you're 65 or younger disabled, your Medicaid eligibility changes. And then your eligibility changes based on functional needs as well. So sufficient to say it can get very complicated very quickly. So please call us to get answers to those questions, because your neighbor might be on Medicaid and you might not qualify, or vice versa. Then there's other aspects of care funding. There's the Washington State Long-Term Care Partnership Program, which is basically the state of Washington supporting people who have a long-term care insurance policy. So the third bullet point there, certain long-term care insurance policies will partner with Medicaid to sell qualifying policies under the program. It allows for a certain amount of personal assets to be considered exempt from Medicaid rules, as long as a long-term care insurance policy of equal value is used first. So I showed you those asset limits for Medicaid. This is kind of saying that the state of Washington will work with your long-term care insurance policy to avoid you having to spend down to that asset limit. So here's an example. If your partnership policy that was approved by the state paid $200,000 in long-term care benefits, Washington State Long-Term Medicaid program would allow you to keep $200,000 in assets and still qualify for Medicaid assistance, as long as you meet all other Medicaid eligibility requirements. So basically, they are saying that you make use of that long-term care insurance policy, we'll let you keep that money that you have potentially that is equal to the policy benefit. And when that policy benefit's exhausted, you would then qualify for Medicaid. It's basically the state saying, we want you to use that benefit first, and as a reward, we're going to still let you qualify for Medicaid. Again, this gets very complicated, so there could be some trap doors in there I don't know about. So talk to the right people about it. Generally, you're going to want to talk to an elder law attorney in these cases. And then there's also the State of Washington Long-Term Care Trust Act. This is one that's brand new. It's been in the news a lot. It's funded by payroll deduction on employee earned income. There's no employer match. It's just you putting money in on your earned income. 58 cents of every $100 of your earned income will start being taken on the payroll deduction starting next year, July 1 of 2023. This was moved back. I think originally the start date was January 1 of 2022. Self-employed people can choose to join, but it's mandatory for anyone else getting earned income. Purchase of qualified long-term care insurance policies by November 1, 21 allowed employees a program exemption. So there was a rush for people to buy long-term care insurance policies to get out of having to have the payroll deduction for this program. Beginning July 1 of 26, any person determined eligible to receive their benefit can access services and supports valued up to $36,500. So again, the qualifications are very complicated. Details of the program benefits are still to be determined. The nice thing is, once you qualify and can draw those funds, there's no denial due to health status. It's designed to serve people who are known to not be able to access other funding for their long-term care. So this is still very much in the works. We're going to hopefully have information about this going into the new year. We're hoping the state of Washington will provide guidance and funding to us at the county level to provide presentations like this one today, strictly about this program and how it works. So stay tuned, stay in touch with us. Hopefully we'll have more information we can provide to you this coming year. How am I doing on time, Lindsay?
We are right at 10 o'clock and we do have a couple questions. I think I might need to email some information for them though.
Okay, so I go till 10:15?
Well, 10 o'clock, but we can fudge stuff around a little.
Okay, so I'll go real quick then. So let's conclude in talking about legal documents. Definitely, these are the things you need. You want to have financial and healthcare powers of attorney forms. You want to have advanced directives for healthcare, known as living wills. The post form physician order for life-sustaining treatment is provided by the physician only. So this is something you want to meet with your doctor on. Certainly have last will and testaments in place. Make sure you and other trusted family members and professionals, such as your attorney and physician, have copies of these forms. Keep the originals in a known secure place. And the reason I say that is we have a lot of clients who will come to us and say, I know there's a will somewhere in my house, or I think someone else in the family has the will, or the attorney has the will. We call the attorney's office. They retired or not in business anymore. So have the documents, have the copies available, have them someplace where you know they're supposed to be. So we're concluding. Resources for more information. Our office, 253-798-4600, or our website. The Office of Insurance Commissioner has a lot of information on long-term care policies, as does Columbia Legal Services, also has information on Medicaid, the Long-Term Care Trust Act, information at that website. Medicare, you can also call or visit their website, and COVID-19 vaccine information at the health department, 253-649-1412. And stay tuned. Again, please visit our website periodically. I'm trying to get as much stuff on the calendar as possible that you can click on and get details on, including the upcoming conference, October 1, for the Alzheimer's disease. All right, thank you, everybody, and we'll look forward to any questions that come following today. Anything that comes through email, we'll try to answer for you.
Thank you so much, Matt. And Sherry, I did get your questions in my email, and I will send you a response to those because it's something that I'll want to send you some links to. So you should see that later today. But thank you so much, Matt. It's always such valuable information and stuff that really everyone needs to know. All right, thank you all so much. Next up, we have Marian McGonigal from Visiting Angels, and she's going to be presenting on boundaries and caregiving. And I think you might be muted.
Okay, good morning. Hi there. My name is Marian. I work at Visiting Angels, and we are a company that provides in-home care for our seniors. I am a Washington State home care aid teacher, and we also have relevant continuing education classes that are all available to caregivers. Whether you are a paid caregiver or a private caregiver in the community, you are welcome to attend any of the classes. I also have the privilege of being a volunteer chaplain for our caregivers, just for added support. Sometimes it's much needed, so I get to do that. So today's presentation is about boundaries. I can tell you this is kind of personal for me because I literally read the Boundaries book 4 times. So what I'm sharing is, information I've learned as an instructor and kind of personal as well. So boundaries are an issue many professional and family caregivers wrestle with. Today, I'm here to give you guidance on how to set boundaries and find the balance between serving the needs of the person you are caring for while being mindful of your own limitations. It is critical to maintain your own well-being and know what you can and know what you cannot do. And you are the only one who can establish and maintain your boundaries. So boundaries is a term we give to the process of navigating where my needs and my interest ends and another's begin. Boundaries relate to a sense of self. The boundaries we exercise or do not exercise define our internal compass that helps us navigate through our daily life. They define our values or conscience, you can say it that way. It's like when you adopt the value that if I say no, I will disappoint the other person. And or if you said a statement like, if I say no, then I'm a mean person. Difficulty saying no leads to the caregiver feeling obligated and even sometimes trapped. So fence is often used as an analogy to represent what boundaries are. Some individuals have these tall, impenetrable fences. They're the type of people that take care of themselves and sometimes not too concerned what happens to those around them. And the opposite is the person with a weak fence, like these planks are falling down, the gate is sometimes wide open. These people are the type who do not stand up for themselves and maybe don't advocate for themselves and maybe even seen as a doormat, quote unquote. They're so busy thinking of others, pleasing others, that they have little time and lack of energy and resources even to care for themselves. So the objective today, we're going to go through some points. Time is limited, so some of these things are abbreviated, but number one, I want to help you recognize your boundaries when they've been breached. 2, I want you to understand the benefit of setting boundaries. 3, give you a picture of what boundaries look like. I'm going to give you some practical applications of what this might look like in your life. Provide you with some simple steps you can take to establish healthy boundaries. And last but not least, offer some insight when you find yourself dealing with a broken boundary system. So Elizabeth is here helping me out. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. So boundary breaches, boundary fractures in our boundaries is where our fence is collapsing. And this can occur on 2 fronts. It can be self-inflicted, which we'll refer to as internal boundaries. And then there are boundary breaches that are inflicted upon us, and they're caused by external sources. A breakdown of our fence due to internal boundaries being violated can lead to feelings of guilt, burnout, and exhaustion. And the breakdown of boundaries due to external sources imposed on us may lead to feelings of offense, anger, and resentment. So the situations that cause these feelings can be unique to each caregiver, but to the degree that anyone feels these emotions, it's really probably a good time to examine the boundaries you are not setting. So when we talk about internal boundaries and this emotion of guilt, what does that look like? Because boundaries are connected with our values and our conscience, a telltale sign that a boundary breach has occurred is a feeling of guilt. And there is this legitimate guilt, which can indicate a specific kind of boundary breach. Guilty feelings occur when we have done something that violates our conscience, our sense of what we determine of what is right and what is wrong. Feeling guilt represents a self-inflicted breach. But when we recognize this, we can take responsibility for our feelings, and if necessary, we can readjust the boundaries that we have set for ourselves. They're not set in stone, you can readjust them. Guilt can be an appropriate and functional emotion. It is what allows each of us to act with integrity. However, there are times when feeling guilty isn't always justified, such as when we are caring for a family member, it's knowing how much to give, how much to take, when to say no and when to agree. These things can get very blurry. And where's the fence line? When you may find that the care you're providing is overextending yourself to the point of not being able to take care of your own needs, but pulling back because you feel guilty, and you may feel that you owe that family member the care that you are providing. I can honestly tell you, and I don't have a problem telling you, that most of my life I've been a pleaser. I told you I read the Boundaries book 4 times, hating confrontation, fearful of hurting someone else's feelings, not wanting to say no, being the first to apologize. It was easy for me to feel guilty. But I have learned that telling someone the truth may not always be pleasant, but sometimes it is necessary. And I have also learned that my own feelings of guilt isn't always an accurate judge of what is right or appropriate. And that was hard for me to learn, and a good thing for me to learn. Sometimes I need to step back and be objective. So there are two types of guilt you can experience as a caregiver. I wanted to draw your attention to them so that you can learn to identify them and make better decisions, change your behavior, and in the end, you will feel more freedom and integrity. Another emotion that we mentioned as far as internal breaches is burnout and exhaustion. And I could be more lengthy about this, but kind of a synopsis. There are many reasons, numerous reasons why caregivers experience burnout and exhaustion. And, it can be certainly due to long hours, poor nutrition, lack of support, lack of encouragement, even lack of acknowledgement of the sacrifices you're making, the hard work you're putting into the care you're providing. Even the most competent caregivers fall victim to burnout and exhaustion. However, when I reflect on the many care providers I have had the privilege of working with, I can say with confidence that not being able to set appropriate limits with the people you're providing care for will make you susceptible to burnout and exhaustion. So, external breaches. Boundary breaches that are inflicted upon us from external sources. And I'm going to give you some practical applications as I read this, but what does this look like? So another indication that a boundary breach has occurred includes feelings of being offended and or angry. Unlike feeling guilty, feeling offended indicates that someone outside ourselves has crossed one of our boundaries, has violated our values, or has criticized our sense of self. I find that as professionals, we exercise enough restraint to not act out on these emotions with our clients directly, but I also find that we sometimes carry them with us. These feelings can rob us of the joys associated with our job. And my note to you, my note to myself, is that if you are experiencing anger in your caregiver role with a client or a family member, I would advise you to consider that some form of boundary or limit setting behavior needs to take place. And when we do not identify our anger and deal with it, you can say it morphs into resentment. Resentment is where anger parks itself when it has not been properly addressed. Resentment also makes it impossible to work with a client or family member. And even if we are able to, you can say, tolerate the duties associated with the job, we perform these tasks begrudgingly. And there is no benefit to you or the person you're providing care to. And just an added note to self, remember that our clients are people too who have feelings, they have emotions, and they may display the same signs and symptoms when their values and their boundaries or sense of self has been transgressed. If you encounter a care recipient who presents as angry and resentful, it might be wise to consider whether or not you have done anything to cross their personal boundaries or undermine their sense of self. It is essential that those whom we have been called to serve know that they have control and that their decisions will be respected and their decisions and how they want things done will be honored. So let's look at some example. What does this look like? So let's look at internal boundaries. Simply put, internal boundaries, to reiterate, involve saying no to self. Sometimes this serves to protect our own sense of integrity, and sometimes setting internal boundaries serve to protect our clients or family members and even protect your agency and your employer. So here's the first example. I had this lovely woman. She attended dementia training that I was having here in Tacoma at Visiting Angels, and she relayed how she had offered to help a family member care for his wife. The wife had early onset dementia, and the husband worked full time, and he had his own business. He was very busy. His comment to her invitation to support him was, "She's my wife, and I can do this on my own. My wife is my responsibility, and I can take care of her." And up till now, he has denied her offer to help. In the meantime, his young wife with dementia is home all day, all alone. She is loved, she is safe, she is cared for, and for now, the husband has declined. So just consider this thought. There is this law of cause and effect. You can also known as you reap what you sow, and there are consequences to the decisions we and others make. We want to fix things for our loved one and our client. We want to rescue them. But as we know, our clients, our family members have the right to make their own decisions. And I can appreciate the pain and frustration of this caring family member that she experienced after her offer to help us declined. However, it was right for her to respect the husband's no. She needed to honor the boundaries set by those to whom ultimately hold the authority. Even when we see the unfortunate consequences of those decisions, and sometimes that is a hard decision, it sounds a little hardcore. And let me clarify, please do not misunderstand the need to advocate for those whom we feel are being neglected, who we think might be abandoned or being exploited. And this was not the case in that situation. And here's a helpful phrase. When attempting to establish boundaries is the idea that we are responsible to, but we are not responsible for. This basically means that we have a responsibility to share our concerns, to share our observations to the individual, but we do not have the responsibility for the decisions others make and what others do with that information. And here's another illustration. A case manager from another agency gave me this example, and she relayed that one of their clients called the office first thing in the morning. The client requested that they please cancel her shift for the day and not have the caregiver show up to their home. When the staff member asked, why she wanted to cancel services for the day, the client responded, well, my caregiver, Susie, has cancer, And yesterday, after Susie talked about all the challenges she is facing, I stayed up all night worrying about her, and I just need to be home today and sleep because I am so tired. I understand that a large part of our job is about building relationships, and in some way that is easily accomplished through reciprocal conversation. For some, self-disclosure is no problem, it comes really easy. And for others, maybe not so much. However, I have commonly been confronted with situations where the caregiver's self-disclosure results in the client worrying about the wrong worker. And at the end of the shift, ensure that when you leave the home, that you have been a blessing. And being a blessing does not mean disclosing personal information so that the client is burdened with your problems. Another common challenge that I see, and this happens for different reasons, is to spend one's personal time with the client and similarly give out personal contact information like your cell number. This activity may require not only significant resolve to say no to self, it also involves saying no to the client. And I know that's hard sometimes. Such actions often represent an explicit violation of your agency's standards. This is an issue of liability for the agency you work for. While your decision might disappoint your client, your violation of such standards may jeopardize your job, your position with that agency if done willfully and continuously. And there are a myriad of ways in which we may need to learn to place limits on our own interest so that you can serve with integrity and honor their clients and your employer. And the following really is just such a limited list. It's kind of abbreviation, but they are some things that I have recognized and seen, and you can put them in your own context. So let me just kind of quickly list a few boundaries you may need to be resolved to uphold. The first bullet point, you will not get involved in a romantic relationship with your client. You will not steal from your client. You will not accept a ride from your client when your ride doesn't show up or you're waiting for your Uber. You will not speak ill of other caregivers, of other family members, or the agency you work for. Always regard those whom you work with and those whom you work for with the highest respect. You will not exploit your client financially. You will not borrow a barbecue or a car from your client, justifying it by saying, well, they never use it and they said it was fine. You will not purchase your client's vehicle. You will not work for them privately or hire your friend or your partner to fix their roof. And you are not your client's daughter or the son they never had. You're not going to call your client mama or dad. And as the picture shows, don't take pictures of your client, period. So you are a care specialist. This is your job. This is your profession. This is your responsibility. These standards are put in place to protect you from liability, protect your job as a licensed care specialist, and just as critical, protect your mental health. And here's some boundary examples as far as saying no to others, and this is what it might look like. Just a couple of examples. So as the intake coordinator, as well at the visiting angel's office, I received calls from loving, caring, yet exhausted family members calling on behalf of their loved one. And they often say, my loved one is fiercely independent. It really is probably the most common adjective I hear. And understandably, their loved one insists on remaining in their home. And this is always our goal that we want to help them attain, to support the family member in providing care and assistance so that their aging parent or parents can remain in their home for as long as safely as possible. But in the best interest of their loved one or their client, if they choose to reside in their own home, they may need to come to terms with the fact that they will require some additional support, whether that is through committed friends, from a long-term care agency and pay for services, or relatives who have offered to stop by on a regular basis. And as an added precaution, wear a device to alert 911 just in case there's an emergency. Setting limits or establishing boundaries related to these precautionary measures is not about us trying to control or attempt to control them, but these limits and expectations are made out of love and respect. And ironically, to preserve their independence, which is what their goal is and which is our goal. In the best interest of the client, family members, POAs, guardians may need to impose some actions that the care recipient may be initially refuse and may initially resist. So consider this thought. Many of our seniors' lives and their environment has been controlled by unforeseen circumstances and events. They did not plan on having a stroke and losing mobility on one side of their body. They did not plan on their child dying before them or their spouse. They did not expect to have to move into a one-room apartment and sell or give away their most precious and memorable belongings. They did not expect to lose their driver's license and be dependent on somebody else, or be homebound, or outlive their beloved pet. The myriad types of losses that our clients and family members have endured can seem overwhelming. Loss, and specifically the fear of further loss, can drive many of those whom we work with to present as very controlling. But I would suggest that fear is one of the primary agents. These are the clients and family members. They start making requests that might ask you to compromise your values or compromise your better judgment. And how you respond is your responsibility and your decision. It is up to you. And I just want to present another example of setting an external boundary that is a little bit different in form. That is, it's a boundary that does not directly apply to a client, but those involved with the client, with their loved one. So I received an email from a man who is supporting his elderly mom, and he said, "My mother makes it sound as if she is independent and does not need much help. She does accept help from my daughter, her granddaughter, on occasion. She claims to seldom see or call her brother, but my uncle contacts me whenever he knows I'm in town and complains that he goes to see his sister 2 to 3 times a week to help his sister, my mom. I asked my uncle to stop going over as he is enabling her claim to independence, but he continues to do so. I plan on offering my mom to either allow my daughter to move in or have a caregiver from Visiting Angels come by a few times a week, or move into an assisted living facility." So there's a couple of observations I just want to focus on. Number one, this is an example of the son's conviction to set limits with his uncle. These limits, or you can call them boundaries, serve the purpose of moving his mother in the direction of receiving more reliable support. And number two, and this is something else in this example, the uncle complained about having to visit his sister 2 or 3 times a week. And more than this, he was unable to stop supporting his sister even after being asked to stop. The uncle's complaining might be considered as a form or early stage of resentment and the result of himself not being able to set boundaries with his sister. I do not know how this responsibility may have negatively impacted the relationship, but any negative effects might have been mitigated had the uncle been able to establish some boundaries around the amount of time he is able to support his sister. How are we doing, Elizabeth?
Good.
Okay, so in summary, there are some examples of when it might be important to say no or to set limit with others. They serve the primary purpose of mitigating the negative results of poor or absent boundaries, so that one can continue in their desire to support others and do so from a position of strength and from a position of integrity, and honestly trying to avoid those feelings of guilt and anger and resentment. And there is, however, just another side to setting limits that is also worth acknowledging. Setting limits isn't always just about us, as in the case of the son telling his uncle to step back. It's also about those we are providing care for. The authors from the Boundaries book, Drs. Cloud and Drs. Townsend, summed it up well. They state that when we fail to set boundaries, quote, we will privately endure the pain of someone's irresponsibility instead of telling them how their behavior affects us and other loved ones, information that would be helpful to their soul. Okay, so let's look at some steps or measures, and these are, again, it's just limited because of time. Some things that you can do to establish and or maintain healthy boundaries. And the first one is establish boundaries on day one. In doing so, boundaries will be easier to maintain going forward. Number two, you might think this is a bit strange, but blame the agency. If you are a caregiver and you're having difficulty with a request that crosses a professional boundary, blame the agency or the company you work for. So like an example, what you might say to your client, I appreciate your invitation to stop by and visit with your family on Sunday, Miss Betty, but I'm not permitted to visit on my own time. It is against company policy. You're welcome to call the office and schedule additional shifts. Otherwise, Miss Betty, I will look forward to visiting you next week. And leave it at that. Blame the agency. The next one, number three, is learn to be objective. Boundaries almost always involve some emotional process that can blur your judgment. Objectivity can be gained by speaking with others. It's helpful to get a different perspective, and whether that's speaking to your case manager, your employer, your supervisor, a chaplain, they just will give you a different point of view. Just step back and look at it objectively. Number four, and here are some questions you can use as guidelines. And some of these suggestions are from the DSHS Mental Health Manual. And again, it's limited, but it'll give you some definite defining guidelines to help you stay within the parameters. So the first one is what I am doing secretive? Another bullet point. When I enter my notes at the end of the shift, is there anything I did or said that I'm not comfortable disclosing? If my supervisor, if my family member, if my case manager, pastor could hear my conversations or see my actions, would they approve? Would it be right? Is what I am doing causing me stress? Is it causing me to worry? Is it causing me guilt? Are you waking up at night? Are you thinking about it after hours? And last but not least, has anyone already commented on my behavior or suggested I stop? If you find yourself crossing or tempted to compromise clear agency standards, this is a time for self-reflection. This is a time to ask yourself, what is getting in the way of me setting this boundary? And be honest with yourself. Maybe it is time to address issues that you've been avoiding. All right, as we finish up here, just a couple more final thoughts. So if you are learning to build your fences or you're rebuilding, there's just two things I want to mention, and because of time, the first one is take responsibility for your feelings. I know that an easy path to walk is to blame the care recipient for the anger and the resentment you may feel, to attribute your anger and resentment to the actions and comments of your client or family member. They very well could have some responsibility to bear. However, you also bear responsibility for the feelings you experience. The anger and resentment you feel for actions taken or not taken, words said or not said by your client or family member might be attributed to the challenges you had in not setting appropriate boundaries. And the second point I want to stress is about forgiving. So it's realizing that our anger and resentment may be the byproduct of our own actions is humbling, but is also freeing because it is easier to let go of feelings when we realize they are of our own creation. At the same time, a caregiver may feel quite justified in wanting to hear the "I'm sorry" from the care recipient when there is no indication that these sentiments are forthcoming, that anger can transition into a sense of resentment that eats away at us while undermining, even destroying the relationship. Forgiveness involves letting go of the debt you believe you are owed. You might be thinking they should say that they're sorry. Yes, I am owed an apology. But once you surrender this expectation, you are no longer bound to them. To choose not to forgive is basically to keep yourself emotionally hostage to the resentment you are harboring against them for behaviors they are unwilling or unable to acknowledge and take responsibility for. You become psychologically bound to that person and to behavior over which you have no control to change. You may want to, but you cannot make them apologize. And let me reiterate what I said by reading a quote from Doctors Cloud and Townsend. They write, quote, "Unforgiving people allow other people to control them. Setting people who have hurt you free from an old debt is to stop wanting something from them. It sets you free as well. Forgiving can lead to proactive behavior in the present instead of passive wishes from the past." And what this means to me is that you are moving forward in a manner where you act toward another as if they haven't committed the wrongs against you. I'm not saying you have to trust them again, but you can forgive them. In this way, you honor your own integrity. You move forward healing your own wounds, your past traumas, and possibly restore broken relationships. And I stress this, albeit with new boundaries set in place. You're going to have new boundaries set in place. So in closing, ladies and gentlemen, boundaries are a very important part of our personality structure. Our personality in many ways is defined or outlined by the boundaries we set or don't set for ourselves. Boundaries are an inevitable part of every relationship and always in play in one form or another. Because our jobs caring for others is quite intimate and personal, you can be assured that you will be confronted with a boundary breach or two. This presentation is aimed at helping you identify when you have allowed a boundary to be crossed in order that you might be able to make necessary adjustments that will allow you to serve from a place of strength physically, emotionally, spiritually, serve from a place of integrity, serve from a place where you can make a difference, and so that you can go the distance and fulfill your calling as a care provider. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Marian. We have a couple questions. Carrie was wondering the information on the Boundaries book, and I believe it's Boundaries by Dr. H. Cloud and Dr. J. Townsend.
Yeah, Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. They have several different boundary books, but mine was literally just called Boundaries.
Okay, perfect. And I'll put that information in the chat so people can see it.
Okay, perfect.
And then also Matt had a question related to boundaries with caregivers being invited to stuff like family dinners, birthday parties, holiday events.
Okay. Yeah, I was invited to a 100th birthday. And I thought, I just had respected and admired and worked with this particular client. And the family said, Marian, our dad would love to have you join us for the 100th birthday. And so I got permission from my office staff. I talked to the case manager, let them know the invitation. They said, absolutely, go ahead. So I would say that door is not always closed, but certainly get permission, because even when clients are in the hospital and we would say refrain from visiting them, just talk to your case manager, talk to your employer so that everything is disclosed.
Great, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And I want to mention we are having an issue with the chat. So chat questions aren't coming across. So I'll put my email in the chat again. If you do have questions at all, feel free to email me directly. And we'll ask them as we can. If we're not able to answer during the conference today, I can email you afterwards and get you connected to an answer.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Thank you everyone so much. We're going to stop and we're going to take about a 10-minute break. So if we all want to reconvene here back at 10:45, we'll get started with our next presenters then. Thank you all. All right, thank you, everyone. Welcome back. Just a reminder, and I put my email in the chat. We're having some difficulty with the chat, and I guess some people aren't able to raise their hands either. So my email address is in the chat. If you have any questions at all during the presentations or about anything, you can feel free to email me. If we're not able to answer it during the conference today, I'll email you back with an answer or the best places to contact to get an answer. We'll be picking up our conference now with Karen Gilbert. She is with the West Pierce Fire and Rescue, and she is going to be presenting on their connected care program and how it can be a helpful asset.
Good morning. Can everybody hear me?
Mhm.
Okay. Let's see if I can get my screen to share here. All right, let's see. There we go. Okay, my name is Karen Gilbert. I have been an RN in Pierce County for 26 years. I've spent the last 25 at Franciscan doing various roles, but a good chunk of my time was with care management. So I came to West Pierce Fire and Rescue in February of this year. Technically, the program's officially be up and running for about 4 months now. I appreciate you guys inviting me to participate. Side note, I am at one of the stations, so if a call comes out, I will stop and then restart. So just to give you a little bit of background on West Pierce Fire and Rescue, we were founded in 2011, the merger of Lakewood Fire Department and University Place Fire Department. Our district includes City of Lakewood, City of University Place, and the town of Steilacoom, who contracts with us for emergency services. We serve about a population of 100,000. And we cover 31 square miles. So we are what is considered an all-hazard fire response department. We have a Marine division with 3 boats and Marine pilots, along with rescue swimmers, rescue divers. We also have rescue technicians, which are for those high-risk rescues, like trenches, rope rescue, extracting. We also have a very robust prevention department with public education and emergency preparedness. And then, of course, we have our EMS medical response side of our department, providing services for life-threatening calls, as well as some of the calls we'll talk about here today. So just to give you kind of a overview of calls, call volume, that has increased quite a bit over the years. Last year, total calls were 17,776. Out of those, a little over 2,000 were for fire and hazards. The rest were for medical. So about 80% of our calls are related to medical services. So we want to be able to be available for those life-threatening emergencies. And so the fire chief made a good example or good analogy. Historically in fire service and EMS services, a patient calls 911, we go pick them up, we take them to the hospital, and we continue to do that cycle without asking really the question why. And sometimes that question can be easily answered so that they are not having to use the 911 system. So that's where connected care is sort of born from. There are multiple programs in the county, as well as Tacoma Fire has a CARES program. We are here at West Pierce called Connected Care. So that's how the program really got started here. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the goals of our program. the resources that we have available that you guys have probably heard a little bit about today already. The ongoing education for the community as well as the crews, and kind of hopeful future state. So there's a universal care management motto, really, is the right patient in the right place at the right time. The emergency room is not always the right place, and we want to make sure that we're here to help people get into that right place at the right time. Our goal is to empower people to be able to manage their health care, their mental health and social needs, not here to enable people. We want to empower them and show them their resilience to be able to manage using the proper tools. We want to be able to provide appropriate resources so that people can stay in their home independently or realize that they need to be in a different setting before it becomes a crisis. So part of that is getting our crews educated on seeing things before they are in crisis mode and people have to get out immediately. I want them to refer them to me prior to getting to that point so that we can work on sort of long-term care goals and all the stuff that comes with that. Making sure I'm collaborating with community resources so we're up to date and know what programs are out there. And part of that is working with ADRC to be able to see what programs are available to the community. And then ultimately reduce the overutilization of EMS services when it's not necessary. So who really needs the connected care program? So I'm going to give some examples here. Patient using 911 system for transportation to the hospital because they don't have their own transportation. They may not have family or friends that are able to transport them. Being able to help them connect with transportation or potentially connecting with dispatch health to be able to come see them in their home for minor issues. Talk to the crews about when they see those elderly patients who are living by themselves and starting to decline in that health, and they are requesting resources from us. So that's a prime patient for me to be able to get involved with before it becomes a crisis. It's for that patient that we're responding to multiple times and are considered a high utilizer of healthcare resources, not just ours, but maybe the hospital, or maybe a high utilizer of community services without sort of fixing the problem, if that makes sense. So trying to fill in the gaps as to why they're continuing to call and finding that root cause. A patient who's having some mental health issues and they're not able to navigate the system, having resources available to them to help them walk through that process and using the resources that are out there for them. Also, patients that are in facilities that are not, that the crews may feel like the care is not up to standard. We are all mandatory reporters and making sure that they are reporting those to the appropriate agency. Also, patients and families, if they need education on chronic conditions, you know, a patient that's coming home from the hospital and they've added 4 medications and now they've called us a couple times in the same week, and it could just be based on starting that new medication and not understanding how it's working and some strategies to educate them on that chronic medical condition. So this is what Connected Care for West Pierce is doing. And this is kind of a visual model of what CARES programs do. My colleague over at Central Pierce came up with this concept of the visual, where Connected Care is in the middle, and we are using multiple resources in the community, communicating and collaborating We also advocate for patients and the crews. I say that half of my job has to do with patients and the other half have to do with making sure that the crews have the tools that they need to help provide care in the community. We do collaborate along with other Pierce County Fire District's CARES programs. I hear something new, they hear something new. We are sharing that information. Using wraparound services in the community. Some patients may need a few of these, and some patients might only need one. We are also collaborating with Lakewood and University Place city officials as well as law enforcement. So I thought this was a good visual for people to kind of see what connected care does here at West Pierce and what how programs kind of work in the community. So in terms of the future, we're looking at a bright future with being able to help provide services for people and add tools to the toolkit for them. Hopefully we will continue to evolve and remain as a good steward of the district resources. Hopefully by next year, we'll have some good data and show the impact on the community. And like I stressed before, part of my job is to keep up to date on education for patients, but also crews, because we want to support the experience for the crews as well as the patients. If both sides are happy, then it's a better interaction and providing that service for the community. So that's really all I've got this morning. If there's any questions that people have.
I don't have any that have come through. We'll give it a minute just in case anyone wants to send me some. I just want to say how important programs like this are. It really takes a village. You know, it's so easy for people to slip through the cracks and for people to not, you know that there's help out there, or maybe just get missed by programs, or, you know, it can be hard for people to know what program might work for them. And, you know, as many people we have working together to try and connect people to helpful resources, it's just better for everyone. It's so hard when we hear people say that, you know, they've tried for years, or, you know, they didn't get the help until after they needed it. So, you know, anytime we have, you know, connections in the community like this, it's so important.
Absolutely. Communication is the biggest thing, I think. And sometimes you have patients that have multiple people following them. I always say that we're all vying for the same patient. And sometimes it takes just communicating with everybody together to be able to get that patient what they need.
Yep. And, you know, sometimes it really does take a team of people to help people get connected to the best program or to what might serve them best. Well, I don't see any more. I'm just double checking, see if any questions came through while we were chatting. I don't see any. If we're not able to answer your question during the conference, if you send me one, I will send a response to you. So if you see my email in the chat and email me there, folks, I will email you back. And I can get you, Karen, can they contact you if they have questions about the program?
If they do have, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
You can contact me.
Perfect.
Right now we're, because I'm a department of one,
Mhm.
in terms of actual referrals, they're all internal, but absolutely any questions about programs, whether it's ours or Central Pierce or East Pierce or Tacoma.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much. And I do want to note for our attendees, most of the PowerPoint presentations are on our conference webpage. I'll put that webpage in the chat. It's under the, I can't remember the exact tab, but it's under one of the tabs. So if you want to go back through the slides, you do have that available. And we will be putting the recorded conference on our webpage next week as well. So if you want to rewatch any parts of it or the whole thing, you will be able to do that as well. Well, thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And Lisa, if you are ready, our next presenter is Lisa Doyle from K-Care. You may have seen some presentations from her before. She's been a very active part of our conferences in the past, and always a very valuable resource. And she'll be presenting today on caregiver stress, frustration, and guilt. And we're a couple minutes early, so we might take a minute for Lisa's stuff to get put together for the presentation. All right, and bear with us. We're going to get Lisa's presentation up, and we'll get that going shortly. And again, if you have any questions, I'll put my email in the chat again, as well as our webpage address for the PowerPoints that you can review on your own. All right, and Lisa, we are ready for you whenever you are ready to start. All right, well, we'll give it just a moment and we'll get Lisa going here.
I'm on.
Hey, there we go. Thanks, Lisa.
I'm sorry if I startled you. I had to run.
No worries. We got wrapped up a few minutes early. It's, you know, these things happen with our virtual world.
Let's see here. Okay. So hi, nice to meet everybody virtually. My name is Lisa Doyle. Did you want me to just go ahead and dive in?
Sure, yeah, whatever
Okay.
whatever works for you.
Okay, perfect. Let me just make sure my screen is up on the right thing. Okay. I can find the little buttons here. Share screen. Okay, we can do this. It was showing the right thing, but it isn't now. Okay, 1 second. I'm going to go out one more time. think it's because I have you guys up. I have too many things up.
Yeah, I know how that goes.
Too many things. You know how that goes? That's a
Mhm.
caregiving problem right there, isn't it?
So much to juggle.
That's right. Oh, I see what's happening. Okay. It's trying to go to a different screen. Okay, I think I can share accurately now. There she is. Okay. And here we go.
Perfect.
So you can see the screen good.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to go to full screen. Sometimes I have trouble with that when I'm doing these videos, but I'll do my best. So self-care, coping, and caregiving. I was specifically asked to talk about the stresses of being a caregiver. If you're on this event, I have to assume you're a caregiver of one way or another. And I want to tell you that I am thinking of you and feeling that stress with you, I should say, not for you, with you. And great content about just all the things to think about around caregiving. What I'm going to do is talk a little bit about the reality of care and then about some coping strategies. And because of that technique, the stress of it kind of intermingles. So we'll talk about that too. What I find is that some people don't even think of themselves as caregivers. So this is a caregivers conference. But if I was to quiz everyone on here, there's probably at least a couple of people who think, well, I'm not really a caregiver. I'm just on here to support someone who is. And so I usually like to define what a caregiver is. And there were several definitions that you'll see on the screen. But I wanted to point out the one on the bottom, especially, which is a lay individual who assumes responsibility for the physical and emotional needs of another. And so if that fits you in any way, you are a caregiver. So welcome to this club. It's a thing. And we call it formally caregiving, right? When I'm a caregiver, I'm caring for someone. And a lot of people have a stereotype. It looks like this. Caregiving can be a little bit more in depth than that. But I'm not going to go there here. I just wanted to give you that nice basis. And I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to start with this statement. The best way to care is to confront the reality of being a caregiver. I'm going to use words that may trigger you to be aware that you are a caregiver and you might be suffering from some of these feelings or emotions or energies, however you want to look at it. Let's start with the first one. Do you feel any stress about caring for someone? The stress that I often hear families who are caring for someone is that they will say, I'm feeling it kind of internally and externally. I'm feeling overwhelmed is a really common one. I've had people have lots of leg, neck, back, and hand pain as a result of internalizing the stress so much. And so I want you to take a moment and just kind of think about that. Am I feeling some internal overwhelm, hard to focus on the other parts of my life I need to manage? And then what is my body doing? Let's do a self-check there. And then let's talk about this word. Who cringed? I can't tell unless you want to raise your hand. Oh gosh, isn't this a darn one to talk about? Guilt. It's a truth though. And it's actually probably the taboo of caregiving because a lot of times I'll find people don't actually want to talk about guilt. Sometimes it's that dirty secret that they're feeling. And when it gets brought up and someone says it's okay to feel that way, which I'm saying right now, it's okay to feel that way. It brings tears often. So I just want you to take a second and think about that. Do I feel maybe a little guilty? No one's going to judge you, and you don't have to acknowledge it in public or anything, but I want you to take your own self check. And sometimes the guilt is, I don't really want to be a caregiver, but I have to be one. Or the guilt is, I really wish I could take a break, and then feeling bad about wanting to do that. There's a lot of internal turmoil that goes on with being a caregiver around guilt, and it really impacts the decision making. So I want you to go all the way back to this morning when Matt's first talk was on here about all those little fail safes we should put into place to be, he talked about the legal aspects, for example, and finding documents. Well, those are like sometimes the beginning of decisions, and that's where the guilt sometimes even starts. So if you are feeling guilty about wanting breaks, wishing that there was more people involved, wishing that there was someone you could give this burden to, and I'm using the word burden, and some of you probably cringed, but that's part of the guilt, right? We feel like it's a burden internally, but we feel bad that we feel it's a burden internally. Okay. So I just want to I'm giving you permission as a nurse who's been doing this role for 20 years and worked with traumatic brain injuries, dementia, spinal cord injuries, strokes, Parkinson's, ALS. I can tell you it's okay to feel this, because addressing your emotions is going to be part of how we're going to handle them. And so let's talk about that for just another bit. But before we finish, let's keep talking about what the reality of what's going on in caregiver is. Here's another one. This is the one of 4 that I picked out. Frustration. What did I do wrong to be the only person that can do this role? It's not fair. Why me? It's okay to feel those things. It's okay to be frustrated. And let's talk about one of the top burdens that we've seen so much since COVID. But the burden of being a caregiver, or the stress of being a caregiver, is feeling lonely. I can barely care for myself, let alone interact with others. I hear this comment quite frequently. And yet, with this very difficult rope, there is also the fact that you're extremely alone. And I'm sorry. So I've just confronted perhaps the 4 biggest things you've not even really wanted to talk about, think about, or look at. I think it's so important, before I go on to if there's anything you can do, the answer is yes. But before I do, I just really want to take a moment and say that caregiving is tough. Like, if you didn't know it, it's a tough little place to be. So I'm so sorry that you're feeling these things. There's rewards, and there's so many rewards, right? And so many reasons and commitments that we do these things for. And I'm not addressing any of that today. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that, yes, there's lots of blessings and rewards with being a caregiver for someone we care about, right? Those things get talked about a lot, right? So I'm talking about the things that don't get talked about a lot. And that's why I'm bringing up guilt, frustration, loneliness, and stress. Okay. So There's lots I could unpack on that, by the way, which we don't have time for. So is there a solution? Well, the answer is yes and no, because now that you've been caring for someone, guess what? The one now needing care is you. And if you're looking at the screen right now, I looked right at you. We are so good at giving up and sacrificing. But if I'm going to be the best absolute caregiver I can be, got to take care of myself. If you ever go to my compassion fatigue seminars, you will know that I often use the analogy of the stewardess on a, or flight attendant on an airplane. And what do they do at the beginning of every single flight? It's a law, so everyone does it. They say the same thing to everyone across the world. Before you put a mask on anyone else, you need to put the mask on yourself. It's the best analogy I can give you for caregiving and self-care. So anything else I tell you, I want you to know I've just given you permission. I've acknowledged the fact that there are some negative emotions we feel sometimes when we're a caregiver. And that is absolutely the most important thing you can do is care for yourself so you can care for that other person. We're blessed if you're in Pierce County. I don't know if everyone is, but in Pierce County, they have a beautiful caregiver support program that is in place for this very reason, because they acknowledge that family or personal caregivers, unpaid, however you want to look at it, they need to be cared for too. And I don't know if I caught anywhere in there, but gosh, Lindsay, it would be great if you could post the caregiver support program and like in the chat for anyone who just needs to know how to get in connection with that or didn't think about it earlier if it was mentioned. It's really important to your well-being. But there's other things you can do besides that. And then we're going to talk about those. We're going to go into self-care. And I don't know. Oh my goodness. I know I had 30 minutes, but now it's off, right? So how much time do I have left before I go on, Miss?
You technically have till 11:40. The conference goes till noon though. So we were just going to run the slides for the last 3 minutes. So it's pretty much yours till noon.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, woohoo. Being last is fun. Okay. So what I'm going to do though, I'm going to go over these slides. I kind of want to leave some room for questions and discussion if you guys are up for it. If y'all are quiet, I can talk a lot. I have a mouth. I can use it. This is a passion of mine. The Aging, Disability, and Resource Center knows it's a passion of mine. That's why I got invited. Self-care is so valuable and it's really important to discuss. So anyway, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to go through these slides and then we'll have some room for whatever we have till the end. Okay. So
And I just want to say we're having trouble with our chat. So my email address is in the chat box, everyone. If you do have any questions or discussion for Lisa, shoot me an email. I'm monitoring it and I'll ask the questions as they come in. And then if we're not able to answer it during the conference, I can get in touch with you later.
Thank you. Yeah. So, and I didn't do any kind of bio or anything. So I'm the nurse and founder of K-Care, by the way, which is an elder care and senior living advisor. We're a free support program for finding placement, caregiving. And we also do care management, which helps with assisting people in all levels of care and coping and all kinds of things. And we are a free service and we have a free resource support program for all kinds of things We plug people in every day to the Aging Disability Resource Center as one of them, for example. And I am not exaggerating. It's a daily, daily thing. So we do have staffing 6 days a week, and we are on call in the evenings and the weekends for emergencies only. So I just wanted to put that out there. Going back to self-care, because as I say all this and you guys are like, okay, fine, I'll get some support. I want to make sure you know about us as you keep that in mind. Anyway, moving on. So self-care and what we can do. Guys, do you have notes and a notepad? I want you to get it out right now. And you're going to find, I took an adult learning class earlier last year, and the best way for learners to learn is to get asked questions. So you will find that I interact in virtual space pretty often to make sure you're all awake. Okay. So but of course, it sounds like we can't have total interaction. So I just want you to be aware. If you want to interject anything and you email Lindsay, I'm happy to answer. So the first part of self-care is to value your personal time. So I want you to schedule your self-time, make your own self-care as important as the caregiving process. One of my number one coaching sessions I do for caregivers, family caregivers, or, however that looks, I'm going to call it family caregivers, is to make that calendar with the caregiving times and include in that same calendar, because it's just as important, that personal time. And when someone says to you, do you need a break? No matter whether you do or not, you say, yes, thanks for asking, and you take it. Okay? This is your nurse reminder right now. And can I just interject that personal time or free time is not running errands? I know someone there heard me and needed it every time. So yeah, I know how that is. We have a life we have to live. That's survival. That's not personal time, guys. That's just like, I need to eat and make sure the tank on my gas is filled. That's not a break. So if you have been running that way, you're still running when you do those errands. So I'm talking about personal time to, I don't know, go hang out with some friends or something to that like. The big thing I like to use for this is find the spark and make sure you take time for that. And what's the spark? The spark is that thing that if I was to sit with you in your living room and ask you what's something you enjoy, it would be that thing that I instantly can tell you enjoy it because your face lights up and you're like, can't stop talking about it. So what's that for you? I find that caregivers lose track of this if they've been a caregiver for any amount of time. And so I always share my own personal spark. So I love to hike. Love it. If you give me a place to hike, I will do it. On a day-to-day, that's pretty darn difficult. I'm lucky if I get in a hike a week. So what do? I might just want to connect with like a little park by me. I want to get that greenery and the flowers. I just want to take a nice stretch and like interact with nature. It's not a full-on, hike, but it's going to give me a little bit of an energy. And I love to talk about it. I love to think about it. I love all the senses. So the smell of it, all those things. That's my spark. And I could talk about it and answer your questions just about my spark for a long time. Some people's spark is quilting. If I get someone who loves quilting, I can tell their whole body language changes and they've like show me pictures. So I don't know what your spark is, but that's what I want you to keep in mind. Figure out what that is and devote some time to it. It's going to change you. And I've often found that people lose their own identity if they are not taking care of this. And that can be detrimental to your long-term health as well as to your current situation. So I really hope that hit someone home. Somebody I hope needed to hear that because I know that's a really important reminder. Even, I'm a mom, but I'm not a current caregiver. And I need this reminder. I have to look at this slide and go, am I making a commitment? Have I slacked off? So it's an ongoing reminder. of what's best for me as a caregiver, because that makes me a better caregiver. So, okay, if you're taking notes, value your personal time. Let's go to number 2. Evaluate what you need to care better. So sometimes in order to get the self-care you need, I talked about personal time as an errands. We need to figure out what are some of the routine care needs that could be met and maybe don't need to be done by you. Laundry, now obviously bathing. So here's what I say to people, actually. This is like my little checklist. Let's start there. So is your own laundry getting done? Are you taking care of bathing? Like, are you working so hard as a caregiver that you barely have time to bathe? And these are all from 20 years of working with caregivers. So you're not going to sneak it past me. Yeah, this is a real list here. Are we taking care of our own skin and health regimens? Like, are you so burned out, so fried that you're forgetting your own vitamins and, I don't know, blood pressure meds, cholesterol meds? What do you have on that list? Are you taking care of that? And, you know, I have the skin on here because a lot of people really value, taking care of and nurturing and doing some of those things, and that gets neglected. And that'll be the first thing. For example, women will tell me, I'm focused so much on caring for him. Look, I haven't, whatever. I'm not wearing makeup, right? Or whatever it is. So, and then am I getting exercise? Now, some of you may be that might not be a priority for you before. So I'm talking about your list before caregiver. Were you exercising? Were you doing these things and they've stopped? That is part of taking care of yourself. Are you eating? My favorite question to ask a married couple when the spouse is caring for the other spouse is, they fed that person, especially if they need to be fed. And then I ask, well, when did you eat last? Oh, I had coffee this morning. Okay, so you're not eating. So again, we need to take care of the care for you too. And then are you drinking your fluids? You probably have, if you're a tube, I'm thinking of all the medical things, right? So you might have gotten that tube feeding in and all those little, you force that fluids. Mom, drink one more sip. But what did you do? Did you do that? So, and you can take a picture of these screens, by the way. So we got value your personal time, evaluate what you need to do in your own care life better. And then have you considered using a professional? Whatever type of caregiver you are, I recommend you have a professional analyze the situation. So I mentioned that there's a caregiver support program, and I'm going to say it's free. So it's part of our county, Pierce County. So if you're in another county, they're not all the same as far as that goes. So I just want to point that out first of all. There are paid care managers, which our company does that. There's lots of them though. Geriatric care management is an incredible, I don't want to say up and coming because it's actually not a new thing. It's just more embraced now than I've ever seen it. COVID to me completely turned around, and I've never worked so much as a caregiver in my life. Oops, somebody's asking me a question. Let's see. Oh, you got it on there. Yay. Okay. And then if you are a parent or you're providing care, or I'm always saying get involved in support groups, online teaching, books, whatever. Don't put yourself out there on a silo. Figure out how you can be in a community of people who understand what you're going through. Highly recommend that. Okay. So if you're needing if you're a caregiver to me, use a professional. And I don't necessarily point it out right here. That includes counseling. Counseling is super helpful to talk about. Remember, I talked about those 4 ugly emotions earlier: loneliness, stress, frustration, and guilt. Wow, counselors are really good at those. It is more difficult than it used to be to easily access counselors. They're actually quite often full, I have found. However, there's still lots of ways to access them. And I'm actually happy to provide support, some links that I have used for our families at K-Care that I would recommend. There's some online ones as well as in person, and they are pretty good at helping people find a counselor when I have personally found that sometimes they're full. So anyway, so professional, I would say have a care manager who looks at the situation. That's a really good thing. You can use the county, you can use the paid, but I really recommend having someone that's unbiased also, if you can do it. And care managers are bound by an ethical, well, if they are certified, I should say, they're bound by ethical commitment to give you a full spectrum of choices. So I really recommend them. Of course, the county would in Pierce County. And if you're from somewhere else and you need that, I'm happy to give you our contact. My email, I don't know if I have it on the screen at the end, I forgot, but it's Lisa, Lisa at kcare.com, spelled like you see on the screen there, CAYcare.com. And I'm happy to answer questions. Just remind me you're from the Caregivers Conference, so I know what you're asking me specifically. But that is what I would recommend here. So I'm kind of mentioning a layer of using professionals. The point is that there are experts who know a lot about this and are not going to, they're going to help support you towards a healthy way to avoid the total burnout and give you that self-care back that you so desperately need or could need. So let's go to the next thing. So I do a compassion fatigue seminar on avoiding this topic, which I do it on compassion fatigue, but it's really a big part of it is because we want you to avoid burnout. The county wants you to avoid burnout. Everybody who is in the professional industry sees so much burnout. I can tell you, as far as the healthcare, the senior housing industry, we are just so, how do I want to say this? We see this with families so often, and sometimes they can't even see it. So they come into these settings with almost a deer in the headlights look. And I mean, you just kind of, I've gotten to the point I want to give everyone I meet who, once they tell me this, I want to give them a hug because, well, first of all, I'm a bit of a hugger, but also because I can only imagine how hard it has been. So avoid burnout. Number 4, if you're writing it down, the number one reason that care is put in jeopardy is actually the care provider. And it's often because they're suffering from compassion fatigue. So let me tell you some, what I mean, put the caregiving in jeopardy. Let me tell you a scenario. And I wish this was not common, but in my world, this happens. I wish I could say even less than this, but it's not true. It's a daily occurrence in our office. We at least once a day deal with someone in active caregiver burnout. So let me tell you what happens. K-Care, I really need you to get me a caregiver tonight, or I am going to walk out on my mom. K-Care, I just took my mom to the ER. I just can't do this anymore. K-Care, this is too much. Tears flowing. I don't know how to get out of this, but I can't do it anymore. I'm ready to take mom to my brother's. K-Care, I've been caring for my mom for 5 years, and I've just realized that I can't do this alone anymore. K-Care, 911 just called. My mom fell. She's in the ER. Please help me figure out how I don't have to take her home. K-Care, I love my husband. I've been caring for him for the last 3 years, and I'm so overwhelmed. Can you help me find a place for him? I hear that every day, and it really is sad. So I'm sorry it always gets me, but those are real people. I'm working with those real people right now. Those are all real. So that's the reality of caregiver burnout. and why this conference is so invaluable. So invaluable. Rest and recovery as a caregiver is so essential to you as a caregiver. I can't even speak on it enough. Caregiving emergencies are most likely to increase when the caregiver isn't taking care of themselves. And I'm going to end with when we don't say when it's too much. You know how you have a coffee cup getting full and we say, oh, you say when and I'll stop filling, and we say when. It's time to say that about caregiving, okay? Let me tell you, over the years, I have ended up having to place a loved one because the caregiver passed away during the caregiver process because they were doing things they shouldn't be. I have had more than 12 spouses die by being crushed under the person they were caring for. I think in the last 18 months, I've had 12 spouses in some scenario of a death from just that scenario I just described. I've had 2 spouses. One was actually not a K-Care client, but a personal friend that has passed away just from not taking their own medications and having a heart attack. So it's not, I don't tell you that. I want you to understand that, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, this is a real issue that we really want for all of you the very best we can possibly give you. And that means the gift of this list right here. If you don't know how to avoid burnout, I do teach classes. I will tell you, there isn't a current one on the website scheduled because we're working with some communities to set in person because they've been virtual since COVID started. And we wanted to give the gift. I was hoping to have it by this weekend, but I think it's been set, but I don't actually have the dates on there for you to register. If you are interested in going to a compassion fatigue class, either live or online, and you let me know, I'm happy to send any information, anyone, to that email, lisa@caycare.com, and just put compassion fatigue seminar. And basically we teach you the all about that in a great deal of detail. And then you get a resource handout at the end to help. So if that's something that really triggered you today, I really encourage it. And if you are a certified caregiver of some sort, it actually is a continuing education that you can get. I think it's an hour. It should be more. I apologize, but I only asked for an hour. It's an hour of going over it and some interactives too for the live, for both the live and the in-person. Let's see. I just want to make sure that's not a question for me. The idea that caring for an elder is a burden, whereas the word burden is never used in the child raising context, is an interesting discussion. I actually find it a symptom of the fact that we don't value our elders. Okay. Well, what happens, in my opinion, when we come to that word of burden, is that that's probably another word that we don't say, but might feel. So it's more like I'm addressing the fact that anything that we do that's feeling like too much could feel like a burden. The act of doing it is, and all the rewards I talked about, that's the gift we get, right? It's just that, unfortunately, the reality is that when caregiving is too much, it does become a burden. And the other reality is that no one can do it all at all, and no one should do it all. So I'm using words that might feel a little off there. Oh, yeah. Okay, so someone just asked, care management question. Lisa just mentioned, need it for a relative that isn't on Medicaid. How can I get it free? So I will just tell you right now that if that person is in Pierce County, the caregiver support program gives a level of care management, and then Medicaid care management, you kind of mentioned. I have to say, I kind of call Medicaid's more case management than care management. although they do some problem solving skills, the level of what care management does, which is a whole nother discussion, is a little more in depth than that. So, but the free, hopefully that answered what I just said. I would start with the Aging Disability Resource Center. And if that's not something you get near you, they can direct you, or I mean, sorry, if you're not in Pierce County, they can direct you to a similar program through the AAA that they are. It just, I'm not familiar with a lot of other ones that do to the level that Pierce County does. So hopefully that answered your question.
And I just want to note, there was a follow-up question requesting care management in a different county in Southwest Washington. So I just want to let that person know. I'll email you back with the ADRC information for Pierce County care management, and then also Southwest Washington Area Agency on Aging, because they'd be the ones to connect down there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, if you're running into any barriers, we're happy to help. Like, I'm happy to answer any questions around that, as far as, you know, that, but hopefully that helps for the free resource. Okay, I'm going to end. I only have a few slides left. I'm not going to end. I'm sorry. I'm going to end with coping skills. Okay. So we've talked about some tips that kind of help with your self-care. The last tip, if you will, is really focusing on coping. And I love this picture for coping because we have, you know, everything going on in our life. Coping is what, oh, did something, I suddenly hear an echo. Hopefully, I'm not sure why. Is it? Okay, I think it went away. Sorry about that. Okay, so coping is what kind of helps us have some balance. And so when it, you know, a lot of times I've had people say, well, is there such a thing as a balanced life when it comes to being a caregiver and everything else? And, you know, I would say the best chance of that is to look at coping and realize that if you can get some good coping in, then you're going to be a lot better off than without it. Oh, yes. So, yes, I can go back on that for just a second. So another thing, someone just asked me, so I'm going to go back a couple of slides here, is there is an adult day health program, and I was asked to discuss that. So there are some incredible opportunities for both under Medicaid, which is state assistance, and you to pay out of pocket, but it's reasonably priced for adult day health programs. I will say this is limited in especially the rural areas. However, I've helped some families get kind of creative on that and find some avenues through non-traditional adult day health, I'll say that 3 times fast, adult day health programs. So I just wanted to interject that adult day health is basically where the person that needs care goes to a location for the day. They tend to run 5 to 7 hours, and it gives the caregiver a chance to have a break. And it's also, not only is that good for the caregiver, which is why we're here today, but that's really healthy for the person needing care to have some other, you know, really some access to some resources there. A lot of times the adult day health programs have nursing and specially trained staff to interact and make a care plan, and they can help catch some changes in the individual, which is one of my favorite reasons to access them, by the way. And so adult day health programs in some ways are underutilized, although I say that a little with a cringe because there's also not a lot of them. There are some, and I can just tell you that sometimes we have had people access temporary adult day health through smaller, non-traditional adult day health programs that have opened themselves up temporarily for that through, especially I've seen that a little bit during COVID, but where someone comes into, say, a memory unit for the day. I don't know. As I say that though, that's really case by case and typically a short-term scenario. So really you want to find an adult day health program, and Pierce County's ADRC, who's sponsoring today, they can help connect you with that. Hopefully that answered. I mean, I could go into a lot of depth about what they do, but I really want to focus a little bit more on the coping skills for our caregiver. But I'm happy if there's time at the end to answer, we can talk about what it looks like and how they get there and all that kind of fun stuff, if you would like. So coping, let's see if I can get this to play. Hold on, let's see here. Okay. I'm visual. I like to look at coping like this. It's that last hump where you just need to figure out how to get to the top. And if you looked at yourself as the caregiver, that red person is the coping, the coping skills, the technique. And you're like, okay, that's how you get through that last leg of whatever you're doing. So I play this over and over. I think it's a really good visual to imagine yourself needing some coping techniques. So what do you guys think are good coping skills to practice? I told you I was interactive. I don't know how easy this will be, but I'm since we have a little time, I'm just going to give it a minute. Does anyone have any ideas of some good coping skills that they could practice or share with our group here? Okay, I'm not sure if they're able to get through, so I'm gonna go to the list, but if they pop up, I would gladly read them, okay? So a few coping skills that I have found help. This is not an inclusive list, right? Or exclusive, I mean, there's tons more. So participating in daily joyful activities that are joyful to you, positive self-talk, identifying the benefits of caregiving. So look at yourself, look at your scenario. What's the benefits? Which, by the way, the person who commented about the burden, this is a good thing to, if that is something you were feeling as a caregiver, this is a good thing to remind yourself. Getting regular exercise, attending to one's own health by getting enough sleep, eating healthy, and getting medical care. Using informal and formal social support systems. So formal could be that professional step that we talked about, and then informal could be friends, family, etc. Being organized helps with coping skills. And I will tell you, that's a lot of what I do when I'm working in a care management case is when someone's overwhelmed and they've lost that ability to cope. If a lot of times we start with the basic foundation, advanced tip here, by the way, of getting them organized. How can we get those checklists? What can we give up? What can we organize so that it's easy to access? So some of those things really help. So, and then maintaining a caregiver journal. This is actually helpful for the caregiving itself. However, I would say you keep a caregiver journal that talks about the care. I'm also talking about a caregiver journal that talks about the feels. So this was a rougher day. It was hard to get John up and I got a little frustrated, but I walked outside for just a second. He was safe when I left him, took a deep breath, smelled literally the roses in my yard, kind of laughed to myself and went back inside. Okay, I can do this. And those are great. And it's sort of that reminder, I'm practicing. One, look at me practicing my coping skills and self-care. And two, I took a break when I needed it, which is a part of the compassion fatigue we talk about too. So if you are needing professional help, counseling, or care management, get it, seek it. Deep breathing actually is very healthy for us. And it's a really good way to get a handle on a situation. And I'm going to give you one. So you're overwhelmed, you're getting frustrated, you can't get him back into the bed. You've tried 3 times and he's not getting up off the wheelchair and you are starting to lose it. And there's no one to ask. And you're like, do I call 911? No, that's embarrassing. I've already called them a couple of times. Okay. So he's safe. He's sitting in his wheelchair. You say, I just need a quick second here. And you take 2 steps back and take some deep, healthy, full, oxygenating, get that brain thinking breaths. So let's do it really quick together. Okay, I can do this. Let's think this through. And sort of that, sometimes that deep breathing is enough to calm the frustration down, lessen that aggravation, and get done what you need to do, or figure out something else, right? Like maybe it's time to buy the Hoyer I've been putting off, I don't know what it is for you. And then other coping skills would be meditation. And I'm going to leave that loose. That can be Christian, it can be religious, or it could be spiritual, but meditation. Yoga is incredible for one thing. It's an exercise, but it also, I personally have done it, and it teaches some incredible breathing techniques. Oh my goodness, that I use quite frequently just for my own, when I'm feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Massage is obvious, it might seem obvious, but some people maybe not. And then aromatherapy. So I could go in a little bit more depth on aromatherapy, but there's only a few minutes left, so I'm not going to. And then I'm just going to end with one last little thing here before I open up any questions. And that's or if there is any more, what does a break look like? So let's ask yourself a couple of questions. When you think of a true break from your day, tell us what the first thought came to mind in your head. So what's the break for you? And I'm asking the panelists too, okay? Okay, so I need a break. I remember I said some of the rules here. That's not getting gas. So what was the first thought? What would feel like a break to you? And that's what I want you to really think about right now, okay? Okay, and I kind of shared one of my little breaks a couple of times in here, but can you smell right now what it would smell like if you were taking that break? Try to go there. Okay. Can you feel it? Is there a texture to the break? Do I feel the leaves and the scratch of the branches for me? Can you imagine what sounds you'd hear if you were getting that break? For me, I'm hearing birds. There's birds all over my break. So I'm hearing them chirping. I can kind of hear a breeze, the trees rustling, just a little one. Can you connect with this break in the space you are in right now? So your day-to-day home, I'm going to assume, are you getting this break? If it's work and you're a caregiver at work, are you able to give yourself the break you need for within an actual break time? Could you commit to yourself right now to add this type of break every single day, no matter how busy? I know you said yes till I asked that one, huh? I know that's a commitment. That's how serious self-care needs to be, though. You have to be so committed that even on the most stressed out, horrible, worst day you've had, you still go, okay, I got to take a break. I committed this to myself. I want to be a good caregiver. Okay, what was Lisa saying again? Okay, can I smell that? Okay, let's do this. I'm going to go outside, or, I'm going to go grab that quilting. I'm going to go step in that garden for 5 minutes. I'm going to go make those chocolate chip cookies. I don't know what it is for you, but make that break a commitment. And by the way, if you're making chocolate chip cookies every day, you better have a lot of people to give them to, or you're going to have another issue. But I just want to say, I'm thinking of you. There's lots of people who care about you, who are here and only can imagine what you're going through, but aren't in your shoes. And hopefully this was a gift to you today, to confront the fact that you might need a little bit of self-care, as well as being that caregiver. I want to wish you all the best. And again, my email is lisa@caycare.com. And as long as you put a title so I have an idea what you're asking, I'm happy to answer any questions. And Lindsay, I'm going to put it back to you for the last 6, if there was any questions that popped up I missed or anything.
No other questions, just some responses that it was a great presentation. And you know, I've always said, and I'm a former caregiver for my grandmother, being a caregiver is the hardest job there is. And oftentimes it's a very thankless job. You don't really have somebody thanking you often. So all of this stuff is so important. It's, you know, you can't care for somebody else if you're not caring for yourself, or at least you can't for very long. So this is all just so valuable. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for being here. All this great information. I want to thank everyone so much for attending. It's, you know, it's a lot to ask to give up half a day on a Saturday when we finally have nice weather. So I appreciate you all so much. Once again, I'm going to put my email in the chat. I'm so sorry we had the issue where you couldn't ask questions, but I've been trying to answer questions as we go. Any other questions I get, I'll answer. So feel free to email me. Even if you're not able to get to it today, save my email. You know, we can connect next week or something and get your questions answered. If you want continuing education credit for this, if you need that through DSHS, email me as well. I'll be sending out certificates to those who request it. So email me at that same email address that I'll put in the chat. And then I will also link our webpage again. This entire conference will be posted. We recorded it, so it'll be posted next week. So if you want to share it with anyone, if you want to catch something you missed or just refresh, you'll be able to do that. And also I want to thank all of our great sponsors. Their slides were running before on break, and then they'll run again here at the end. So just some great local companies that are looking to help people out. So you can see their slides as well. And I don't see any other questions. So I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their weekend. Thank you so much for being here. And again, look for my email in the chat if you have any questions. I'm always happy to answer. Thank you.